I've realized a couple things. So one is on the SEAL side of things, like we were never the victim to anything, right? We were often put in impossible situations where we're literally being attacked, but at no point did I ever feel as though I was the victim to any of this. It was all my choice. And I think that's a big component to being unstoppable, right? Like I am here by my own choice. I'm not here by happenstance. I'm not a victim to anything that's going around to me or in my environment. So that's a huge piece to it. The other piece I think that's even more important is what enabled me to have the success rate that I did was not on my individual performance, but based on my ability to coordinate action with others, my ability to team. And that's really, if you want to be unstoppable in your life, your ability to coordinate action with others is what's going to drive that, not your individual performance.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello there. Welcome to another episode here on the Strong by Design podcast. Hosting today, Coach Chris Wilson. So honored to be in yet another conversation with a terrific guest I'm excited to talk with this gentleman because I have a lot of questions that I've written down here in advance based on what he is doing with his team here, SEAL team leaders. And I want to get to introducing who he is, what he is doing, and try and help all of our great business leaders and entrepreneurs and people looking to get to that next level of success in whatever it is that they're doing. Because I think all of the information today will be applicable in just about any arena of business. So if you're a serious person that's looking for change in whatever industry you work in, I think there'll be a lot of great takeaways from today's conversation. Before I get there, I'd like to welcome all of our first-time listeners to the Strong by Design podcast. It's great to have you. If you've never heard the show before, we talk about everything, all things mind, body, spirit. Strong by Design, in fact, is a phrase that we came up with, or even a mantra, you could say, that we came up with several years ago when we met with a mentor of ours and we were trying to figure out what we were all about as a business. And we came up with these three words, Strong by Design. We didn't know quite how we were going to use them in our business. This is years before we even had the podcast. But it helped us develop our core values as a business, our 7 core values, which come up all the time in our episodes. I mean, we're almost up to 240 episodes or past that at this point. And so there's been a lot of great conversation. And that's really what a lot of the conversation will be about today, are predicated on these core values. But Strong by Design has a double meaning. We are created strong by a designer, and we have to also then live that out. So the choices that we make, the decisions that we make on a daily basis determine the direction that we move in our life, right? So we're created strong by design, but we then have to walk that out. We have to live that out. Okay, so our guest today, Mr. Larry Yatch, he is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL officer, a 10-year veteran. So right away, you kind of got to like the guy. I'm come from a family of Marines. My dad was a Marine. He was a drill instructor back in the 60s. My Uncle Barry was a Marine. My college roommate, Jay, was a Marine. And so Marines are great. Navy SEALs are probably even a little bit cooler.
My dad is a Marine. My dad is a Marine and was a drill instructor in the mid 60s as well, I think. So maybe they crossed paths at some point at Ellis Island. They
absolutely could have been at the same place at the same time, for sure. So Larry's had 100. Now, imagine this: 100% success rate, leading and planning 200 plus of the most challenging missions in the world, in the most intense environments in the world. So think about that. Where in life are you performing at 100% in what you're doing? And this is something that he did 200 plus times. So if you're able to go through that, can you imagine what you're going to learn from that repeated process over a decade? Okay. So today he's using his brilliance and this revolutionary ability to then take the complex concepts that he's learned from his intense military training, and he's turning them into simple, precise, actionable behaviors that then create major impact for business leaders and entrepreneurs. So it's very similar in a way, as I was talking with him right before I hit record. It's things that we do here at Critical Bench, where we take the more complex fitness health problems that everyone faces, and we simplify them and create, easy to do, very quick, time-friendly flows and things that people can do in the comfort of their own home and to get results. So we're gonna talk about how you can take all of this great information today and hopefully start to apply it as well in your life. So Larry, welcome to Strong by Design.
That's my pleasure to be here. I loved your intro on both the dual meaning of strong by design, right? Both by being design strong and the individual onus of being able to live that design. I really do. I enjoyed that a lot.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I try to remember to say that often in the shows, because if you think about it, there's people that, they might be a first-time listener and they never heard the other 200 plus episodes or something, and they want to know, what's that really mean? Strong by design. Yeah, sure, but it is a double meaning, and it's an important distinction, I think, and very much tied into what you're doing. It's like the things that happen to us in life, right, are oftentimes as a result of the actions that we're taking and the positions we're putting ourselves in. And I like to equip people with that. Hey, you have the power and the capacity every day to make this choice or that one to move you closer or further from where you want to be. And so obviously we'll be talking about that today. I have to ask, just because I kind of asked permission before I hit record, if he could share a story that he's capable of that falls within the realm of shareability or whatever you want to say with the public, because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you've endured in that long tenure with the U.S. Navy SEALs. There's a lot of stuff that you can't discuss or talk about, but I'm sure there's some stuff that you can. And being a college roommate of a guy that I used to get so many great war stories, I say war stories. Well, he was in the initial Desert Storm in the early 90s, but could you share something that you endured in your training or while you were serving that would just give people an understanding of just that intense environment? Yeah,
I think there's a bunch of different directions I can go on that, but one of them that I think is a useful or a unique insight is the nature of the death of the ego. So as a SEAL, your ego could kill you or someone else. And I differentiate ego from confidence in that confidence is having an expectation of performance based on a history of performance, right? I'm truly confident when I have performed to a certain level many times, and therefore I'm confident I can do it again. I think ego gets us in trouble when we have an expectation of performance that isn't grounded on a history of executing at a certain level. And as a SEAL, that would be very dangerous, right? It'd be very dangerous to have a false sense of confidence, because that could lead you, especially in my role as an officer, to making decisions or directing actions that could put the mission or my team at risk. And Bud's basic SEAL training is really good at beating out any ego you may have. And one of the things that the instructors are experts at is creating no-win situations where no matter what, you're going to lose. Like it's funny as I got further on in my career and had friends that were Bud's instructors and going back into to see SEAL training from the other side, to see how the things that I experienced as I thought it was just our class, that experience is actually programmed, like full on in the schedule, like, this is going to happen. That place of no win, like one of the examples, every day you have to go to and from the chow hall. The chow hall where you eat is about 1.5 miles from where you do most of the training. So you have to run as a class every day to and from 3 meals a day. So that's 9 miles just running to and from eating, much less anything else you're doing, right? You probably average 12 to 14 miles a day. And that running isn't fast because you're running as a class, but you're still having to run. You're not walking. And that jog, like they often make it so that you're either going to be late or you're going to be missing part of the class. Like only half the class can run at a fast pace to get you there on time. So if you get there on time, you're missing part of the class. If you get there as a complete class, you're going to be late. So no matter what, you're going to lose. And it would be amazingly frustrating to be in a situation where it's like, you can't win. And it really paid off in the future, like as a SEAL, having to constantly be faced with what everyone else said was impossible and having to know that there was going to be some way to do it, right? Some way to get it done.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and that's just such a simple example of, can you imagine having to run pretty much half a marathon on a daily basis just to be able to eat?
Yeah. And not much, not counting all the other things, because you have to run everywhere.
Right.
Like, so from the chow, you got to run to the pool. From the pool, you got to run back to the training room. From the training room, you got to run to where you sleep at night. Like anytime you're moving at Bud's for 6 months straight, you're running somewhere. Or they call it the Bud shuffle. Like it's more of a shuffle than a run, but you have to be moving it faster than a walk. There's 5 days after Hell Week where they call it walk week, where you're allowed to walk for 5 days because you're in such horrible physical shape after Hell Week that, most of the time half the class is on crutches or cane or something anyway.
Do people's feet just take them out sometimes, the condition of their feet, because your feet are just getting absolutely torched?
It's like the answer to that is yes and no, right? So yes, there are definitely people that would quit because their feet were messed up, but this would have been just before Hell Week, so probably the third and fourth week. It was the third or fourth week of training. They had issued me the wrong size boots. It was actually, for whatever reason, they were steel-toed boots that they issued me by accident, which ended up putting, I got horrible blister on the inside of my ankle, on the inside and outside of my left foot. Now, the problem with that was the entire day you're wet, right? Because you first thing in the morning, you're getting in the water. Throughout the day, they're sending you to what they call hit the surf, like run out to the surf, jump in the ocean, Pacific Ocean, roll in the sand, go back to whatever you're doing. So I would say my feet would be dry for the first 15 minutes of the day, and that was it for an entire day. And so when you had blisters, they just keep getting bigger and bigger because the only time they get to kind of dry out was at night. So I got to the point where every morning I would wake up and I would take one of those plastic iodine brushes and I would scrub the blisters until they were bright red and bleeding because infection was what I was worried about. Then I would fill the hole that was the blister with super glue. So I'd try and super glue as much as I could, like just cover it in super glue. then I would tape it, and that would keep the sand and the salt water out of it for most of the day. And then eventually the super glue would crack. And so then at the end of the day, when I would get back to the room, I would then take the same iodine brushes and scrub all of the super glue out until it was bright red and bleeding, and then leave it open for the night, and then do the same thing in the morning. It was incredibly painful. By the time Hell Week started, I could put the first knuckle of my pinky finger in the hole that was in the inside of my ankle, and it never healed. It wasn't for, if it hadn't been for the walk week after Hell Week, they would have never healed. Like, they just keep getting worse and worse. And it isn't bad enough to cause a medical drop as long as I don't get infection. So I go to the medical thing and they're like, yeah, you got blisters, too bad. Like, yeah, until they get infected, there's nothing we can do about it.
Gosh, sounds awful. You know,
yeah, it was my poor roommates, because I'd have to get up. We would have to be up at 4:30. I'd get up at 4 a.m. and then I'd be in the bathroom, like, grunting and making noises as I ground along my feet every morning and every night. My poor roommates were not too happy about that noise.
What's it called? There's a bell that people ring when they're just done, right? They go and ring the bell.
Yeah. So
is that what
you have to, after you've already quit, you have to go to the office and request to drop from training, and they make you ring the bell 3 times. At that point, you're already done. Like, you're already out. You've already quit. They don't want to put any barricades between you and quitting. Right. So say, like, they in the videos, they'll show, like, the bells around. You have to stand in front of the class and do it. Like, that would actually discourage some people from quitting. So they want to make it as easy as possible to quit, so that there's no barricade. All it takes is one moment of weakness, one time of saying, I don't want to do this. And an instructor will take you aside and be really nice, give you a blanket and say, okay, like, so you sure you don't want to do it? You're dropping our request? Yes. They'll ask you one more time and you're done. That's it. If you change your mind 10 seconds later, too bad. You've already quit.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. How many were there guys that you thought in the beginning, no way this guy quits, and that person ended up hitting the wall? I mean, were there people that you were around that were like, no way, probably? So I guess twofold. And then were there people who were like, there's no way this guy makes it, and he was there at the end? I mean, obviously. Both
ends, right? I can think of specifically two guys. One that I would have bet any dollar I had was not going to make it, and another that I would have bet everything that he was going to make it. And the one guy was a helicopter pilot, so he's older. He'd already been through flight school. He's like 24. He was ranked in the top 10 in the world for Olympic left triathlons. Like, the guy was a specimen. Yeah, machine. And mature, smart, right? Like, everything you would need. He even looked like Captain America. Like, you know, he looked like right. And he quit the third night of Hell Week. Yeah, and Seaman Wright was from Oklahoma, never seen a body of water bigger than a swimming pool. He had just gotten off deployment on a ship, so he's about 35 pounds overweight. On our initial screening test, he did the absolute bare minimum to the second to get in. Every test we had for all the buds, he would just barely pass. And if he could, like, fail twice, he'd fail twice and then pass the third time, and he graduated. I would have said, there's no way that guy's ever going to make it.
Wow. It just shows you that so much of it is just right between
it's
here,
all,
right?
Because to start, like, my class started with 135 guys. Those 135 were selected from 1,000 or 1,500, right? So every one of those 135 that showed up was qualified to be there. So everyone starts off qualified. and only 11 graduated with out of those original 135.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. That is like a 95% attrition rate or whatever.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you're just, the fact that you're able to get through it, I don't know. The odds are against you. 100%. Like, you're looking around going, and is that the typical rate of drop off?
My class was either the second, I think it was the last or the second to last winter class. So we started in late September, and it just gets colder and colder. And we graduated in early May, late April, early May. So it's just now starting to get warm again. And they stopped having winter classes where, like, my Hell Week was late November in San Diego. Like, that's miserable. And then you go into dive phase, which is after that. So we started all our water stuff in January, which is like, to have to dive in the San Diego Bay in January is freezing, and it's raining and cold and the sun's never out. So our attrition rates through the winter classes were always worse. That's why they stopped having them. So 10% is probably worse than normal, but it never got better than 25% success. So like you're looking at 70 to 80% attrition rate, and on average it was 80%. So, and those 8 out of 10 people that quit, those were selected. They're probably 1 out of 100 that got selected. So it's like, just to get selected was hard, really hard. And then of the ones that got selected, only 10 to 20% are going to make it to the end of that first block of training. Like Buds was just the first 6 months. We had a year of training after that. So you're going to have more attrition after that.
It's really commendable. Fantastic.
Or it's like, the other way to look at it is the common thread is we're not quite right in the head. Like, you got to be not right to be able to do that. So like, yeah, it's commendable. That's and you're crazy. Like you can't be normal.
But those are the people you need in not normal situations that they're faced with. Yeah. I don't want Joe my neighbor down the street defending my my freedoms. Yeah. I want somebody that's, you want the Liam Neeson, you want the guy that's just, bulletproof, so to speak, or unstoppable, or just the never give up, all those things. Like, just losing isn't even an option. And that's pretty awesome. And it's taken you 12 years and 4 companies to create the systems that you're using with SEAL team leaders that allow, obviously, your clients to become unstoppable. And I see that word a lot in your literature, unstoppable. What kind of, is that a word that kind of comes up from your training, from all those years as a Navy SEAL, or where did that come from? Because is it unstoppable is capitalized? Is that a one of your a program or something in particular?
I think so. Yeah, unstoppable teams. What I've realized a couple things. So one is, on the SEAL side of things, like, we were never the victim to anything, right? We were often put in impossible situations where we're literally being attacked, but at no point did I ever feel as though I was the victim to any of this. It was all my choice. And I think that's a big component to being unstoppable, right? Like, I am here by my own choice. I'm not here by happenstance. I'm not a victim to anything that's going around to me or in my environment. So that's a huge piece to it. The other piece I think that's even more important is what enabled me to have the success rate that I did was not on my individual performance, but based on my ability to coordinate action with others, my ability to team. And that's really, if you want to be unstoppable in your life, your ability to coordinate action with others is what's going to drive that, not your individual performance.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about that. I went through, again, there's great bullet points and stuff. I encourage anybody, obviously immediately after listening to the podcast, is to go to his platform, his website, sealteamleaders.com, and you can read a little bit more about what they're doing. They can get the book, How Leadership Actually Works, which looks fantastic. I'll have to, I'm a bit of a book reader and an Audible type guy.
Yeah,
do they have that on audio
version? Yeah, I'd love your feedback after you read it.
Oh, without question. I mean, for me, I love to say, I got books stacked on my desk. I got books, that I love to read, but sometimes the convenience of listening while you're driving and commuting, I can devour books much faster that way. So that's a great option for anybody out there that is not a page turner. Get the audio version, which would be great. Did you by chance do the reading?
I did not, because I don't have the inflection to keep someone's attention. I think I'll put people to sleep. So they wanted me to, and I said no way. We got an amazing voice actor to do it. Enough that I'd read the book, because through the whole editing process, I must have read every line 5-6 times, right? And when I was listening to it, I found myself like completely engrossed in the book, just because the voice actor is so good. So yeah, it's the Audibles. It's a good listen for sure. And you'll be glad
fantastic.
I'm not doing it.
Well, that's great. I made some notes here because we use a lot of this in our processes and our systems here. The founder of Critical Bench, who's a close friend of mine, he's a huge believer in ongoing learning and mentorship and coaching. And any great leader, if you think you know it all and you feel like you have nothing left to learn, then you got to reevaluate your situation, because all great leaders are still learning and still getting led by others. And it's an important part of being a great leader, is that interest in learning and that curiosity and continuing to grow. I kind of made some keywords out of a lot of the bullets off your page. I just want to kind of talk about each one individually. Number one, where a lot of people who are frustrated with they're not progressing or not getting anywhere, is they fail at planning. At having a plan for their success, just like all these New Year's resolution type people. Planning obviously is kind of where it starts, right? Is like having something in your mind and creating actionable steps to get there. Could you just touch on planning real quick?
There's two points there. One is eating the elephant, right? Like, you got a big ass elephant, it's one bite at a time. A purpose of a plan is twofold. One, to be able to take that elephant, make it more digestible. The second piece is that our success in life is dependent on our ability to coordinate action. The greater our ability to coordinate action around us, the more success we experience. The sole purpose of a plan is to help you coordinate action with yourself and with those around you. And so it becomes a foundation of performance in any way, shape, or form. And ultimately, I think the only way to live a free life or a good life is one in which you plan and coordinate well with others. So, that's, I'd say, the start of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been heard from one of our mentors and friend of ours, Craig Ballantyne, who you may have heard of before. And he always says freedom through structure. Yep. Which is very much the same way. People who are afraid to set guidelines and create structure in their life because they feel like, well, that's going to not allow me to, do this, they feel like that's going to rob them of freedom. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah, I believe that discipline and structure give you the space to have the freedom to make choices, to innovate, to be able to grow.
Yeah, no question. So those first two things, planning and then action, which you kind of already went there. Third thing I have is evaluating. Being a good evaluator of kind of where you're at, and grading, using grading metrics and having, the spreadsheets and having all of this stuff where you're actually plugging the information in and being able to talk about the performance as a team. Talk about that. Just being good at knowing your numbers is another way to put it.
I'll go to even, I'd say, a slightly more fundamental level, in that I believe that are really the only asset that we truly have or own, and I would argue is our most valuable and most limited asset, is our focus and our attention. When I ask people what they believe our most important asset is, they often tell me time. Time is made up. That's a human construct, right? To help us coordinate action. It doesn't really exist. All of us have had that experience of turning a minute into an hour, or turning a week into a minute, right? So our attention and our focus determines our experience of time. And it allows us to put our power towards something. And so if your attention and your focus is your most valuable asset and your most limited, your ability to assess where to put it becomes one of the most critical skills that you could have. Because if I'm not putting my attention and focus at the right area, I'm wasting my most limited and most valuable asset. And that's why I love assessments. I love metrics. I love KPIs, because that gives me the ability to have confidence in where I'm putting my focus and attention, which then allows me to leverage that asset effectively.
Love it. And for anyone listening who's like, KPI, what's that? That's a key performance indicator. And we use that language here at Critical Bench. We have little meetings we have team meetings every week. And then daily we have a huddle, which is a very short 5-minute meeting with the team that's under this roof here. We have 20 odd people that work for us, but we have a collection of about half dozen that are here, and we meet together for about 5 minutes, very quick. And we have a little thing that we go through: victories. You do a victory, a lesson, what your next 24. That's the most important thing in your next 24 hours. What are the KPIs you're responsible for, and then did you hit your what's your outcome for your previous 24 hour most important thing. And everybody just runs through that. And it's good because it keeps you like, all right, well, crap, I got my huddle coming up in a couple hours. I don't want to look like I'm coming up short. I better get some GSD. Yeah. That's I got my GSD. Get you know what done, right? You can say get stuff done. We keep it clean here on Strong by Design. So then I go from evaluate, and then the keywords I have next, I have optimization and accountability kind of together, because it's kind of like finding where you're coming up short, where your weakness is, and optimizing the performance. Talk about that for a quick second.
I'll talk about optimizing two sides to it. One side, which I think is the most important side, is optimizing your experience, your daily experience. We've shifted the understanding of what success is from setting a goal or objective and achieving it into being an optimized daily experience sustainable over time. So when you look at success as opposed to an accomplishment to achieve and more of an experience to have, you have the possibility of actually experiencing success. And in doing that ability to experience success, optimizing your daily experience is something I have to pay attention to. Otherwise, I could produce a bunch of accomplishments and be miserable in their production. And most people don't focus on that, especially high performers. We're taught to suffer today for a reward tomorrow. And when we live in that way, we can't ever experience success on a daily basis. So that'd be the first part of optimization. The second thing of optimization for me is optimizing my team, optimizing my ability to coordinate action. I truly believe that our success in life will 100% be determined by how well I'm coordinating action with those around me. So if I want to optimize my daily experience, I have to optimize my team, which will then produce that optimized daily experience.
Yeah. And obviously the underlying thing there is communication, right? We have to be terrific communicators as a leader, no matter if you're leading yourself or you're leading a team. You have to be a really good, consistent communicator. And that's not just being a good speaker. That could be, how you communicate through the platforms that you utilize as a business. We use Basecamp, or people use all these countless different platforms, but you have to be consistent there, and you have to have other people buy into that accountability and that increase and improve their communication skills. Because everybody wins when everybody's connected and everyone can kind of like support each other. And but when you're an island, and people don't know what the heck's going on here or over there, or little things build up over time. So the next two things that there was several more bullet points. I kind of broke them up into two key areas. One being team building and the other being culture. Could you kind of talk the distinction between the two? Like, team building is one thing, culture being a bit of something else. And why those two things are really absolutely important in the workplace or in any working environment in order to be successful.
So I made the statement just now that your success is determined by your ability to team, right? So the more success I experience, the better I'm coordinating action. If I want to achieve big achievements and have a good experience in doing that, I have to have a good team. Right, that's a fundamental principle in life as a human being, because we're insufficient to survive on this planet, much less thrive alone. Right, so that's a foundation to it. So team building is critical for production of success. Culture, you can look at from one of two ways. One way to look at it is, what is the experience of the individual on the team? Right, that is often how an individual would assess culture. Would be based on their experience of being on a team. Really, it's how they feel about being on the team. And it's in that feeling, or the concern for that feeling, that we can produce not only more connection on the team, but we can also produce a more optimized daily experience, right? So my job as a business is to produce feelings of success in my clients, in my team, and in the owners of the company. Those feelings of success are dependent on optimizing the daily experience of my clients, my team, and me as an owner. If any one of those things isn't working, then I'm failing to fulfill the core purpose of a business, which is to produce feelings of success in those three domains. So the only way I can do that is by worrying about the culture and optimizing the performance or the coordination of action with a team. So I got to worry about both sides of it, right? Performance and connection, right? Connection is what gives a human a good feeling. Performance is what enables us to move the needle. I got to worry about both sides. If I'm too worried about performance, I pay for that in connection. If I'm too worried about connection, I pay for that in performance.
Yeah. It makes me think about a podcast I did I think that towards the end of last year with Dr. Paul White. He was actually a co-author of a book with Gary Chapman, but the difference between recognition and appreciation, actually, in the workplace, and both things are important. But I think a lot of people don't realize the difference between the two. Recognition is more like what you've produced as a worker, right. Right. What's measured as an employee or a team member, whereas appreciation is a little bit goes more to the human side of thing, like into maybe your character or just you as a person. And both those things are pretty darn important in the workplace. But I think it's missing in a lot of places, a lot of work environments where it's all recognition, and then the people never feel actually appreciated. Who aren't recognized.
Yeah, I think you look like recognition would be based on the value you produce, whereas the appreciation is felt through the connection you have, right? Which goes back to what I was saying before. On one side of it, I do have to worry about value production, right? Like as an individual, the measurable things I'm doing. but I also have to worry about the connection side of it, which is how they're going to feel, right? Because you could have someone producing good results, but feel miserable in those production of results, and you've got an issue. And many organizations only focus on the measurable, which is the performance side, and they pay for that by having a disconnected team, which is fine in easy environments. But as soon as the going gets tough, it's the connection that adds the strength to the wall. That's the mortar, right? The size of the brick doesn't matter. It's the amount and the quality of the mortar between the bricks. In a team, the value that individual people represent is the size of their brick. But if there's no mortar, no connection between the team, as soon as there's pressure on that wall, it's going to fall over. Same thing on a team.
Wow. Makes me think of the teams that you were part of back, when you were in active duty and leading other people. I mean, how close were you with these guys? And are you still to this day, do you still feel a really strong pull or connection to the men that you endured a lot with?
So it's interesting. I didn't have to like you as a SEAL. It didn't matter, right? If I liked you or not, your life was more important than mine. That's what mattered, right? So the fact that I lived in a world where every one of my men's lives was more important than mine, and they lived in a world where every one of the others on the team's lives was more important than theirs, ended up giving us that strong connection. And I could actively not like you, but I would still put your life as more valuable than mine. And I'm going to take the actions necessary to make sure that you're safe, which then ultimately is selfish, right? Because if I'm on a team where I'm worried about me before everyone else, I got one person worried about me. When I'm on a team with 16 other guys that feel that my life's more important than theirs, I got 16 people caring about my life. And so it's altruistically selfish, right? In that, yes, in being altruistic and worrying about you more than me, I'm being very selfish because I know I got 15 guys worried more about me than themselves.
Wow. That's great. I did an episode recently with Frank Turek, who he's an amazing speaker, and he's a Christian apologist who has written, he's an author and speaker and unbelievable man. And he mentions the story in a lot of his talks at colleges and universities all over the country, and mentions the name Michael Monsoor. And I'm sure you know who that is or have heard of him before. Back when George Bush was president, he posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor to his parents. He sacrificed himself for two of his fellow SEALs, yep. I believe, in 2000, and it was the early mid-2000s. And it makes me think of the word sacrifice. And I think that's a great illustration of, obviously not at that level, for all those listeners out there who are like, I'm not in active duty here. Right. I'm not going to jump on the grenade here, but we all have those choices on a much smaller level in our professional life or even in our personal life, where it's sacrificing your needs for the needs of others and putting others before you, and how it's that servant leadership. Could you just talk about that for a moment?
I look at it as honor, right? So honor is not really something that is talked about outside of the military, education, or often in medicine as well, right? Like those are kind of the only three areas where you actually have a conversation around the concept of honor. I think it's a lost principle that just in the normal, especially I think nowadays, I think it's even less something that's understood. To me, honor is living to a code of behavior in which the good of the group comes before the good of the individual. Every honorable action that we can think of, all the way to the Medal of Honor, right? The Medal of Honor is where I sacrifice my life for the lives of others. Every honorable action is where the good of another is put before the good of the self. Every dishonorable action is an action where my personal desires or needs are put in front of that of another, right? If I steal or cheat or lie, I'm putting my concerns in front of the concerns of the other. If I go all the way to what is the most dishonorable thing, which would be murdering someone, I'm literally taking their life for the benefit of mine. And so it's just a fundamental principle as a human that when we live with honor, we put the good of the group in front of our own good. And the reason that is so ingrained into us as humans is we actually can't live, as I said before, we can't live on this planet alone. We need other humans to be able to survive. And the better that we work with other humans, the more we thrive. And so living with honor becomes a foundation for me to be able to coordinate action with others and live in high performance and I'd say love and care.
Yeah. Wow. It's great. I love that. It's great insight. I've never considered that or thought about it in that way, but it's terrific. Love it. Hey, it's totally different type of question. I didn't even prep you for this at all, but I don't think you need much prep. What are your top 3 all-time movies when it comes to men of honor or women? Any movies or even books, if you wanted to go there, that you highly recommend or that you feel are great depictions of living this out?
So one of my top, since you opened it to books, Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield is there's a movie, The 300 a while back. So it's about the Spartans defending in Thermopylae. The book was written.
Of course. I have the movie poster signed by Gerard Butler in our hallway, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it
well.
well.
You need to read this book. You're going to love it. It's the book that the movie was based on. I love that book. It's a really good one, just to really talk about really looking at a warrior culture, what it means to be in a warrior culture, sacrifice, service, toughness. Like it's a good one all around. At least in my life, if it wasn't for Top Gun, I wouldn't have ever become a SEAL. So I saw Top Gun in 3rd grade and decided I was going to be a fighter pilot, and that set me on the path to the Naval Academy and eventually the SEALs. So that's another one that's way on the top of my list. If we're talking things that have the biggest impact, I don't know if it's the best books, but The Men with Green Faces is a Vietnam era SEAL book. Not necessarily the best book, but if it wasn't for that book, I would have never even known about the SEALs. I read that book in 7th grade and decided I wasn't going to be a fighter pilot. I was going to be a Navy SEAL. So that's another one that, like I said, I can't necessarily say it's the best book, but that's the one that changed my life for sure.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I wrote it down, so I can't miss them. And if Gates of Fire, as you said, is based on the story of Leonidas in the 300, I'll have no problem getting through that.
As it happens, right, the movie is just a fraction of what the book, because the book goes through some of their training and all that stuff. It's an epic book. And Stephen Pressfield's a really good writer.
Yeah, Stephen Pressfield, you said.
Yeah.
I'm going to write it. Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you for that. I'm always looking for another good book or another good movie. So, hey, did you see the sequel to Top Gun? Did you see it yet?
I saw the sequel. It was 4th of July weekend. I got to fly my dad out. So I got to go with my dad and my 2 boys who are 8 and 5. So it was so cool to be able to see it all these years later with my boys and with I remember sitting next to my dad. And that's when my whole life direction was formed in that stupid movie theater when I was 3rd grade. So it's funny too, watching the movie. It's like, I want to be a fighter pilot all over again. I guess I'm too old at this point.
You're never too old. No, it was, I thought they did a great job, and every person who I've heard talk about it has nothing but great things to say. My wife, I even have my peripheral vision, I could see my wife doing like fists and stuff. It's like, I'm like, God, just get my wife worked up in the, in the movie. So I thought that was great. Yeah, it was a good movie. So urge everybody, go out there, check out Gates of Fire, Men with Green Faces, and go see Top Gun. If you'd like.
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask Steel movies, because that's all different list. But I'd say on those topics, I'd go with it.
That seemed too obvious to me, right?
Yeah, I like it.
It seemed too. I wanted to go a little bit different. So, where are some of the the best platforms for people to learn more about what you and your team are doing?
The best is the book website. So, How Leadership Actually Works. If you at all, if any of the things that I said today, struck a chord, and I generally don't speak in shallow stuff, relatively deep things. The book is it's been 20 years, between 10 years of SEALs and then 10 years of entrepreneurship, of actually having to take what I learned in the SEALs and put it into action in businesses all the way up to $1 billion companies. It's dense, but I am so proud to have been able to share this information with people that normally we charge $100,000 a year to deliver this content. And so being able to have a much broader audience to send it to is good. And we wrote it, or I wrote it, from the perspective of application in personal life, professional life, and family life. And so even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you want to understand how to perform at a high level in anything from parenting to fitness to professional life, it's everything I've got on that. So we held nothing back. That's the best place to go. HowLeadershipActuallyWorks.com is the website.
That's fantastic. I will absolutely add that to the description of this episode. So whatever platform you listeners are on, just scroll down and read the description area, and you will see that link there, so you can go check out that book, which I will be doing, and I know I'll be getting it on Audible or an audio version of it. So Larry, I thank you so much for sharing some of your past, some great stories there, and just some great takeaways for people. Really, really appreciate you making the time.
My pleasure. Thank you for sharing me with your audience.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Listeners, you know what to do. Take action, right? We just talked about it. So take some action and go find out some ways that you can propel your business into that next level, go to that next chapter in your life and start to really see what you're capable of. And hey, hit that 5 stars, whatever platform you're listening. We would love a review based on this conversation today, a past episode perhaps, or just our podcast as a whole, what it means to you. We would love to hear from you. And in some future episodes, I will read more of those. I do enjoy doing that. So thanks again. We appreciate you. We will be releasing another episode next week on Wednesday. As always, we'll talk to you then. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.